to the storyline where the news becomes the story. I'm Midori Tachibana. Our storylines this week. Checkmate, Zaldico. The president announces the former Ako Bicol representative has been taken into police custody in Prague. What did Czech authorities apprehend him for? On our writer's notes, family feud within the Lopez clan as reports to shut down ABS-CBN surface. A special guest helps us break it down. Madriaga in the House. Vice President Sara Duterte's alleged former bagman testifies in front of the House Justice Committee. What he revealed about the VP later on the program. The storyline starts right now. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. Former Ako Bicol representative Zaldico has been apprehended in Prague, Czech Republic. Ko was a major player in the flood control scandal, overseeing the House Appropriations Committee that distributed the budgets for each construction project. How was he arrested? And why in Prague? Let's begin breaking down the climax. On Thursday evening, President Bongbong Marcos announced Zaldico's arrest in Prague via social media. Reports first surfaced of his arrest by the Philippine Daily Inquirer, who learned the former lawmaker was apprehended after crossing its borders without proper documentation. Before this, he was reportedly hiding in a gated community in Portugal. Ko allegedly had a Portuguese passport that allowed him to live in the country with a quote-unquote golden visa. The former congressman initially fled to the United States for medical reasons back in August 2025, then left for Japan in November. Earlier this year, he resided in Stockholm, Sweden, before moving to Lisbon in Portugal. Ko then moved to Italy just before the Holy Week and set for Germany, but was returned to Czech Republic for illegal entry. There is a catch though. Remulla says Ko did not have his Portuguese passport with him.
We will immediately cancel his passport, and those grounds will be based on cases that will be filed against him.
Zaldico is believed to be in Europe, suspected to be in Portugal. He is suspected to have a Portuguese passport acquired so many years ago. Meron na, pagkaalam ko na-cancel na yung passport niya. Pagkaalam ko lang ha, we believe he's holder of 2 passports eh. Not only a visa but 2 passports. So, doon yung may complication tayo na konti.
Back in December, the Sandigan Bayan issued that cancellation, which included all passports belonging to Ko, alongside an arrest warrant for a corruption case. Now, Interior Secretary John Vic Remulla has said the Department of Foreign Affairs is leading negotiations with Czech authorities for Ko's return, which might happen in 1 to 3 weeks. The Czech Republic does not have an extradition treaty with the Philippines, which means there is still uncertainty whether he will be returned to the country at all. A lookout bulletin was issued on September 2025 for the former lawmaker, declared a fugitive from justice by Sandigan Bayan. The lawmakers have welcomed Ko's arrest, including House Speaker Boji D, who said this was, quote, an important step forward for justice and the rule of law, end quote. Meanwhile, his former Ako Bicol colleague, Representative Alfredo Garbin Jr., said he expects Ko to quote-unquote tell all of what he knows about the scandal. One may ask, how did we get here? Ko is believed to be the mastermind behind the flood control scandal, where he allegedly used his power as House Appropriations Chair to embezzle millions of pesos into his personal funds, including 168 billion pesos in unprogrammed appropriations and 26 billion pesos worth of infrastructure projects. He stepped down from this post for health reasons. He resigned from Congress in September 2025 after being linked to these flood control projects and insertions in the national budget. The congressman is among 16 individuals facing graft and malversation charges for a botched flood control project in Nauhan Oriental, Mindoro worth 289 million pesos. SunWest Corporation is the contractor, one of his many construction firms, and believed to be among the 15 firms indicated in President Marcos' State of the Nation address back in July that received kickbacks from these projects. The Anti-Money Laundering Council says Ko received 802 million pesos in check deposits from 2019 to 2025 when he served as a congressman. The law does not allow any business interests done by a public official during their tenure. In November last year, Ko released a series of videos that claim Marcos ordered him to insert 100 billion pesos into the national budget, delivered to him and former House Speaker Martin Romualdez by suitcase. The Malacanang denied the allegations. However, former DPWH engineer Henry Alcantara claimed his biggest cash delivery to Ko reached 800 million pesos during his testimony in the Sandigan Bayan 3rd Division. In addition, Alcantara testified an estimated 519 million pesos worth of alleged kickbacks amounted to 20% of infrastructure allocations under the 2022 General Appropriations Act, which increased to 25% in 2023 when these reached 6 to 8 billion pesos. The palace says Malacanang did not forget about the scandal, but rather spearheaded the campaign to hold public officials who participated in these anomalous projects accountable. Now that Ko is in the custody of authorities in the Czech Republic, the question floats.
Handa ba si Saldico na magsabi ng katotohanan? Kung handa ba siya na sabihin kung sino? Kung hindi natin sinasabing siya'y guilty. Kung sino ba yung kanyang mga nakasama?
The government get him back. First is through deportation, which can be done by the country of origin if there is a pending case or an offense such as an immigration violation. Another is extradition. If there is a treaty existing between two countries, but the Philippines and the Czech Republic do not have such treaty. However, in an interview with Rappler, international law expert attorney Ruben Carranza says past interactions with the Czech Republic might come in handy. If the Philippines can show the charges are not political but legal, there is a possibility to invoke extradition, as the Philippines has already worked with Czech authorities to bring a fugitive in hiding back to his country of origin. But there is also the possibility of Ko not submitting to extradition, especially if he invokes due process in Czech courts or through the European Court of Human Rights, just like Arnolfo Teves Jr., who hid in Timor-Leste to avoid prosecution for the assassination of former Negros Oriental Governor Roel Degamo. Once the former congressman returns to the country, Remulla says Ko will be brought to the Philippine National Police Headquarters in Quezon City to undergo standard booking procedures. He will be later transported to the Sandigan Bayan for the return of warrant, where his detention will be decided upon while trial for his cases is ongoing. The former congressman's cases in the Sandigan Bayan for graft will begin, while his malversation rap in the 6th Division has already seen the prosecution present their evidence. The 6th Division has denied bail for his fellow accused, and his status as a fugitive of justice means he will not be able to avail court privileges as a person deprived of liberty. This week, we are debuting a new segment here on our show. It's called Writer's Notes. This is a segment where the media landscape is examined. The stories behind the story are told, the reports are scrutinized, the journalists are seen through the eyes of fellow journalists. This week, it's the family feud within ABS-CBN that takes the stage. Reports of a shutdown have surfaced inside media conglomerate ABS-CBN. First reported by Billionavio.com, the family feud ensued after Lopez Incorporated Chairman and CEO Federico Lopez expressed his intentions to close and liquidate ABS-CBN Corporation back in November, shutting down operations and contributing to about 3,000 to 4,000 employees losing their jobs. This Wednesday, the conglomerate released a statement responding to the reports of the internal family feud and assure employees the board of directors will continue to do its best to keep the company afloat. But it has stirred unease within. We are joined right now by Professor Gen Garma of the University of the Philippines, Los Baños College of Development Communication to talk about the situation inside ABS-CBN. Welcome to the program, and thank you for accepting our invitation, Professor.
Ayan, magandang umaga, Mido, at sa lahat ng ating mga taga-subaybay. Pero naku, pinromote mo naman agad ako. Instructor pa lang ako, hindi pa ako prof.
Tinatawag po kasi nila kayong Professor Gen, Prof Gen, sabi ni Kuya pa. But anyway, welcome again to the program, and thank you for accepting our invite. So I will go to the first question. How would these shutdown reports impact the business of ABS-CBN, especially now that they've shifted to content production?
Okay, sige. Siguro pwede natin siyang tignan sa dalawang anggulo, no? Unahin natin yung business angle. Kasi yung usapin nung negosyo, kasi we know that ABS-CBN is a content provider for entertainment, and news, most especially din, no? But nevertheless, kahit na malinaw yung public service remit, no, ng kumpanya, a business is still a business. So,
Yes.
sa usapin ito, kung investor ka, halimbawa sa ABS-CBN, meron kang shares of stock kasi publicly listed corporation sa ABS-CBN eh. Medyo makakamba ka rin as an investor na parang saglit lang. Kung may haka-haka na ipapasara itong kumpanya na nag-invest ako, saan mapupunta yung investment ko? No? And sa usapin ng negosyo, yung mga ganitong usapin, no, it brings instability sa, syempre, una sa lahat sa kumpanya. Pangalawa, it can also bring instability din sa mga investors, no, ng kumpanya, especially considering that ABS-CBN is a publicly listed corporation. Kaya kung mapapansin natin, nung nagsimula, no, itong mga ulat patungkol sa family rift, so to speak, ng pamilya Lopez, na biglang it became public and nadadama yung ABS-CBN, although linawin natin, no, para sa ating mga taga-subaybay na hindi naman talaga ABS-CBN yung yung pinaka sentro nung issue nung nagsimula
Okay.
itong tumbok. Parang ang angulo talaga dito is mas, gusot sa pamilya. Siguro, kaya lang din nadamay yung ABS sa issue to is because ito yung pinaka-public face of the Lopezes, di ba?
Okay.
As a family na may mga iba't ibang negosyo. For those who are maybe not aware, no, ang lawak ng Lopez portfolio. Meron kang especially energy, no? Energy, yan yung isa sa mga pinakamalaking investments nila. Dati, they used to have Meralco, telecommunications,
Yeah.
dati, di ba? Bayantel, kanila din yan. And of course, ABS-CBN, broadcast. So, parang ano siya madaling, kumbaga, when it comes to framing the story, madaling i-connect sa audience ang ABS-CBN doon sa Family Rift Time kasi yun yung pinaka-visible. Kumbaga, malay ba ng ordinaryong Pilipino kung ano ang first gen? Kung nasa sektor ka ng ekonomiya, you would know first gen, syempre, no?
Yeah.
Kung ordinaryong mamamayan ka, most likely, ang pinakaalam mo, Meralco, na hindi na ngayon, wala na sa mga Lopez ngayon, as we know, no?
Yeah.
Ganun siya, parang ganun siya na i-frame. Kaya nadamay yung ABS, kahit na originally, ito ay away pamilya. And yung mga ganitong aspekto, no, it can bring at worst no instability or doubts no sa mga naging investors sa especially sa lagay din ng ating ekonomiya. Yun yung unang aspekto. The second aspect na pwede nating tingnan dito is yung aspekto din naman ng media production at ng set ng agenda. Ika nga sa nasa media studies, yung agenda setting theory. When it comes to this aspect naman, ang titingnan natin dito, we have to take into consideration na aminin na natin ang ABS-CBN ay crown jewel ng mga Lopez. Di ba nga may lumalabas na quote from Henny Lopez na sinabi niya na parang sa lahat ng mga kumpanya na hawak niya, ang pinakaayaw niyang bitawan ay ang ABS-CBN. Kasi malinaw din sa kanya yung serbisyo, yung public service na hatid ng isang kumpanya, ng isang broadcast corporation, no? And kita natin yan. It's very evident na ABS-CBN is arguably one of the largest networks in the country bago sila mawalan ng prangkisa in 2020. And sa isang banda, it sets the agenda ng kung ano ang mga dapat pag-usapan natin bilang isang bansa through its news programs, no? Na, kumbaga, kung ano ang top story mo sa TV Patrol, pag-uusapan yan sa buong bansa. No? May ganong power kasi ang media, and in particular may ganong power ang ABS-CBN when it comes to setting the nation's agenda news-wise. Entertainment-wise naman, dahil alam nga din natin na it's a very large broadcast company, ang dami nitong mga pinapauso, for lack of proper term, no? Ang dami nitong pinapauso na nagiging bahagi ng kulturang popular ng ating bansa. Perfect example, Bini. Saan nang galing ang Bini? ABS-CBN. O tingnan nyo, nasa ng Bini na yun, nasa Coachella, diba? So, may ABS-CBN, we have to admit no, that ABS-CBN, being one of the largest broadcast networks in the country, has influence on our culture, on our popular culture in particular, and also it can set the nation's agenda news-wise. But now, no, you mentioned me doon nag-shift na rin sila into content. No? They are now a storytelling company, actually. If I remember, that's how they're trying to shift themselves from a broadcast network into a storytelling company. And ngayon, alam din naman natin na medyo nabawasan yung power ng network, yung power ng ABS-CBN kasi syempre nawala na yung terrestrial network nila So nakaasa na sila ngayon sa cable, sa partnerships with other broadcast networks na merong free-to-air presence, kagaya ng GMA dati, TV5,
Mhm.
with Prime Media, no, with their partnership sa DZMM. And yung dapat naman na pagtuunan ng pansin dito sa bahagi ng media production is baka kasi yung mga empleyado naman ng kumpanya, baka sila naman din yung magkaroon ng doubts, no? Na ano bang nawala na sila ng prangkisa in 2020 and yet they're trying to soldier on. Tas ngayon, yung family rift, ang titig kung if we put ourselves in the shoes of employees, syempre baka mayroon ding mga magkakaroon ng pangamba, no, about the future of the company. Kasi hindi biro yung chika na baka ipasara ang kumpanya na pinagkakaroon mo for so many years. And to think na ang dami na ring nabawas sa workforce ng ABS after the shutdown of the terrestrial network, no? So ano din yun eh. Pero if we look at some of the public statements coming from the network employees, parang medyo ano sila eh, medyo may sense pa rin na kakayanin namin to. The story of ABS-CBN has always been a story of redemption, which is true. Pinasara nung martial law ni Marcos Sr., pinasara ni yung terrestrial franchise ligwak under Duterte, diba? So it's always a story of redemption. So maybe baka magkaroon ng redemption arc again. Kung sakali, it would be the third redemption arc, no? For the network kung sakaling malampasan nila ito. But again, we have to remember that primarily speaking, away pamilya po ito. Nagkataon lang na you know, because ABS-CBN is the most visible part of the Lopez Empire, no? Parang hindi maiwasan na makonekta siya, which brings into question kung paano fine-frame, no, ng ibang mga media organizations yung reporting nila about the supposed rumors of shutdown, and most importantly, itong ang gusot sa pagitan ng mga miyembro ng pamilya Lopez.
Okay, and you brought up the unease within the company itself. Like, paano yun makaka-apekto doon sa moral ng company and just how these outputs are being produced and how are these being perceived by people?
Well, siguro pwede nating balikan, no, yung kung paano yung naging moral din ng mga empleyado ng ABS when the shutdown happened in 2020. Kita naman natin, no, sa mga, at least dun sa mga naghahayag publicly na mga empleyado at talents ng network na na may part sa kanila na hindi hangga't kakayanin, diba? Kasi it's again, the ABS-CBN story is a story of redemption. So siguro and medyo this is a part of medyo speculation na to for me, no. Siguro para sa bahagi ng mga empleyado ng ABS, if may feeling of doubt, hindi natin sila masisisi, no? But at the same time, kakaiba din kasi yung company culture ng ABS eh. And again, nararamdaman natin to in 2020 na even tayo na outsiders na hindi naman mga empleyado ng kumpanya, na-observe natin na iba ang company culture nila. Kumbaga, pinaninindigan nila yung the kapamilya way, so to speak, diba? So, siguro, if you are part of a company that has a very strong sense of culture na, you know, na maitatawid nyo ang lahat, maybe, ito yung magiging driving force then, no, for the employees and for the talents of the network na ipagpatuloy pa rin. Kasi tayo namang mga Pilipino laging sino bang may ayaw sa atin dito sa Pilipinas ng storya ng dati ka nang bumagsak pero makakabangon ka muli. Magandang ano siya, di ba? Parang kumbaga maganda din siyang creative force when you do content. Kumbaga mas magiging malalim din yung mas magiging malalim din yung hugot mo to do and to produce content. Maybe, just maybe, baka sakaling ganun yung, at least ganun yung pangasa ko, no? But of course, I can't claim to speak on behalf of the people of ABS-CBN dahil hindi mo ito kontak-kontak doon. But based on my observations, and most especially given what happened in 2020, feeling ko, given their strong company culture, baka mas magiging strong yung yung hugot nila, no? To continuously produce content, whether that's entertainment or news and public affairs, regardless ng kung ano yung nangyayari, na kung ano mang sigalot na all of a sudden nadadamay ang ABS when supposedly hindi dapat.
And do you think na may malicious intent on Billionario.com's part with the production of these series of articles? Kasi hindi lang naman siya isang article. There were many articles produced that seemed defamatory against ABS-CBN. And paano siya na-display through these articles? How was it exactly angled?
Ayan. Dito na papasok yung yung usapin ng framing, no? Sa media studies, kapag pinag-uusapan yung framing, dito eksakto na pag-uusapan nyo, so bakit ganito nyo siya ibinalita? Bakit ito ina-emphasize nyo? O bakit ito yung lead na binubury ninyo? No? So it's really a matter of framing. Mahirap sabihin kung may malicious intent, no? But we have to consider ano ba stake ng Bilyo in covering this story? Siguro to put it into context, alam naman natin, no, na business news yung focus ng Bilyo, no, the whole Billionaire empire. So Billionaire.com also includes BNC, no, the Billionaire News Channel. So mas may emphasis sila on business news. So it's understandable that they would cover itong nangyayari ngayon na gusot o sigalot sa pagitan ng mga miyembro ng pamilya Lopez. Pero yun, magkapaka ka. Bakit? It's a story of, again, it's a family rift eh. Bakit idadamay mo yung isang kumpanya na una sa lahat considered crown jewel ng empire na yon, ng Lopez Empire, and pangalawa, hindi naman sila yung direktang pinatutungkulan. Kung pinatutungkulan man ng ABS-CBN, parang ano siya may pagka side story siya. Hindi, well, at least parang hindi naman talaga yon yung main story. Kasi di ba ang nag-uusapan dito ay yung mas malaking, kumbaga mas bigger picture no? The bigger portfolio is what's being talked about. Pero kagaya nga ng sinabi ko kanina, since ABS-CBN is the most visible part of the Lopez Empire, kung malikot ang isip mo, mo siya pipilitin mo siyang i-connect the dots. And kung bakit ganon ang pag-frame nila, sila lang din naman sa Bilyo yung makakasagot. But as a media viewer, no, if you view and consume media critically, iisipin mo din talaga. Bakit may ABS sa kwentong to? Parang ito ay kwento talaga ng gusot sa pagitan ng mga miyembro ng isang pamilya na nagkataon na may napakalaking business portfolio. No? Maybe, just maybe, because ABS-CBN is the most visible part of the Lopez portfolio, madali mong kumbaga madali mong ibebenta yung storya. Pwede mo siyang bibigyan sa sa ganung anggulo na halimbawa, pag sinabi mo lang na may away ang pamilya Lopez, ano ngayon? 'Di ba? Parang it might not drive as much clicks, 'di ba? Sinabi mong nag-aaway ang mga miyembro ng pamilya Lopez na nagmamay-ari ng ABS-CBN. Others may think the story is about ABS, which it is not, 'di ba? Hindi, it's not hindi per se tungkol sa ABS-CBN yung storyang to. Maliit na bahagi lang siya ng isang mas malaking kwento. But kung ganun yung pag-frame mo, baka mas maraming clicks tsaka mas maraming engagements. Kasi nga ABS-CBN yung pinaka-visible sa Lopez portfolio. Pwede natin siyang tingnan ng ganon. But if you consume media critically, kung alam mo na ang media ay may mga iba't ibang pamamaraan kung paano mag-frame ng storya, maaano mo rin. Kumbaga, you'll catch the makakatch mo din yung drift na, saglit lang, bakit ganito siya ikinuwento?
So, how are these series of articles impacting the perception of Federico Lopez as a leader within ABS-CBN? And let's take it into a broader spectrum, the Lopez empire. Like, are there any differences in the way he and the ABS-CBN board of directors run the company?
Well, truth be told, mas dahil hindi naman ako nagko-cover masyado ng business beat, parang si Federico Lopez, medyo siya sa atin, 'di ba? Parang bagong pangalan, 'di ba? Kasi kung media viewer ka, you're much more familiar with Henny Lopez, Gabby Lopez, Carlo Katigbak, Mike Lopez, Cory Vidanes, kasi sila yung executives na nakikita natin na visible because of because of their association with ABS-CBN. Now, kung wala ka sa business beat and you're hearing Federico Lopez's name just now, gets. Kasi ako din parang okay. Alam kong there's such a thing as the Lopez Empire, yung dating Benpress Enterprises, na Lopez Holdings na ngayon, 'di ba? But the people behind it, parang malay ko kung sino yung mga yan, hindi na yan kaya ng aking hinagap bilang ordinaryong mamamayan, no? But now na nag-emerge itong storyang to, parang siya of course, if you are in the business beat, kuha mo na agad, 'di ba? Kuha mo na agad kumbaga. Na okay, ang rift seems to be between the energy group ng Lopezes at yung media part, no? There's a good piece from Rappler explaining yung mga naging enterprises ng mga Lopez, from telecommunications sa Bayantel, Meralco, First Gen, and ABS-CBN. Maganda yung pagkakapaliwanag dun sa storyang yon na kung paano binild up ng pamilya Lopez yung empire nila, paano din sila napilitan na pitawan ang telecommunications, ang Bayantel and Meralco, no? And naging malinaw din dun sa storya na yon na ang strong talaga, ang malakas talaga sa Lopez Empire are energy, so energy generation, First Gen, and media, ABS-CBN. But then again, kung wala ka sa energy beat o wala ka sa business beat, ano bang malay natin sa First Gen, di ba? Pero mas may malay tayo sa ABS-CBN kasi yun yung pinapanood natin. Now, when it comes to how do we as people perceive Federico Lopez, if we are familiar with the story of ABS-CBN, if we are familiar na talagang ayaw bitawan ayaw bitawan ni Henny Lopez ito as the family patriarch back then, mapapaisip ka sa isang banda na kung alam mo na isang malaking bahagi siya ng inyong empire, it's a crown jewel in the sense na, well, ngayon it bleeds money, no? But before, no, nung hindi pa natanggalan ng prangkisa, kumikita naman siya and at the same time, malaking impluensya niya to the nation, bakit mo bibitawan, 'di ba? Kasi 'di ba, yun nga lumutang din yung storya na bakit hindi na lang kasi i-liquidate ang ABS-CBN hindi naman na kumikita, no? 'Di ba may ganung kumalat din sa
Yeah,
kalagitnaan.
that was Pique. That
Yeah,
was Pique's stance.
And ideya niya yon na liquidate na lang natin ang ABS-CBN. Sa isang banda, you would think na ang laki kaya ng pakinabang sa mga Lopez ng ABS-CBN in terms of, not just in terms of pera until now that it's bleeding, but really in terms of the power that it holds, no? In setting the nation's agenda, in influencing popular culture, kahit sino, palagay ko, hindi nila yan bibitawan, no? Kasi, ang laking impluensya nun. Anybody would be so envious to have such kind of soft power. Diba? Kaya nga, medyo magdi-drift away lang ako saglit. Kaya nga, halimbawa, napapaisip ka ng mas malakas na yung digital media, pero bakit meron pa rin ilang mga nagpupumilit na bumuo ng broadcast empires, kagaya ng yung mga may-ari ng food supplement na all of a sudden may news FM station sa buong bansa. Diba? Or fine, Martin Romualdez with Prime Media. Diba? At tatayo ng isa pang istasyon, mas nag-emerge na ang digital media rather than terrestrial media. No? That is because media still has power. Diba?
Yeah.
Legacy media still has power kahit na dwindling yung viewership sa terrestrial, tumatawid naman sa digital, so nandun pa rin yung power and influence of the media at kahit sino na may gustong magkaroon ng impluensya sa isang bansa, gugustuhin niya yan at gagawin niya yan through media. Diba? Now, balikan ko yung sa punto with ABS, no? Since malakas ang impluensya ng ABS to set the nation's agenda news-wise and to set trends in popular culture, mapapaisip ka ng kung merong isang Lopez o miyembro ng pamilya Lopez na magsabing bitawan na yan, magtataka ka talaga na ang tagal niyong inalagaan yan, ang tagal ninyong ipinaglaban ang kumpanyang yan, and then all of a sudden parang it's very if someone easily wants to throw ABS-CBN off the bus and your apelyido is Lopez, bakit? Diba? Given the power that the network has. But at the same time, baka yung mga from a business standpoint naman, maybe for those who know their numbers, it makes sense na, oo nga naman, nalulugi na yung kumpanya So parang the most logical thing to do, no? The most logical thing to do is i-liquidate na siya. But sometimes, the most logical thing to do doesn't seem to be the right way of doing things for some. Diba? Kasi nga, for example, sa usapin ng ABS-CBN as a company that produces content and marami silang empleyado, una mong iisipin, so paano yung mga empleyado una sa lahat? Diba? Pangalawa, the void that ABS-CBN will leave once it really is gone forever. Diba? Mapapaisip ka ng, so who will fill that void? Pangalawa. Pero una sa lahat, yung sa mga empleyado din. 'Di ba? Baka mapapaisip din yung mga empleyado na, and not just employees really, but even us outside the company who are not part of the company, mapapaisip tayo ng, bakit merong nag-iisip na i-liquidate ang isang kumpanya na while it's true, it's in the red, but you can't deny its news and entertainment influence to a nation na hindi madaling makuha at hindi madaling i-build. Therefore, kung iisipin mong bibitawan mo siya, parang ganun na lang ba talaga kadaling bitawan? Yan, yun yung mga so far na iisip ko na pwedeng maisip din natin, no, as media consumers and as media observers.
So, ano yung legacy? Like, what is it about the legacy of ABS-CBN as a brand that makes it stand out from the pack? And paano siya makakaapekto sa media landscape ng bansa?
Ayan, magandang tanong yan, Mido, no? Kasi it's pagkakataon siya para sa akin na mag-nerd out about broadcast history. Charot. But, kung babalikan natin ang kasaysayan ng broadcast sa Pilipinas, ABS-CBN really has been one of the trailblazers in broadcasting. ABS, ang pinakauna-unahang himpilan ng telebisyon sa Pilipinas, DZAQ TV, Channel 3, ABS yan. Diba? Yung color television broadcast sa Pilipinas, isa sa nanguna dyan, ABS-CBN. Diba? When they built the ABS-CBN Broadcast Center in the late 60s, it's the most modern broadcast facility in our part of Asia at that time, no? And marami din silang mga pinasikat na mga programa even long before, no? Even long before martial law, and and also to also contextualize yung impluwensya ng media even before, 'di ba? Nagkaroon ng programa ang Marcos Tolentino tandem, no, in I think it was elections 1969, na talagang nagprograma sila nationwide sa ABS-CBN, no, para mangampanya. That's the power of ABS-CBN as a network way back then. And obvious naman, nung panahon ng martial law, the dictator Marcos Sr. was, talagang adamant siya sa kapangyarihan ng media. He wants to control the narrative. Kaya ABS-CBN yung isa sa mga pinakaunang ipinasara nung idineklara ang batas militar, no? So that's pre-martial law and martial law era. Sa era na kung kailan buhay na tayo at meron na tayong malay, ang daming mga programa, maraming mga bahagi ng kulturang popular na nasa consciousness pa rin natin bilang Pilipino nanggagaling sa ABS-CBN. Yung, of course, yung ating ang daming mga teleserye na sumisikat na nanggaling sa ABS, mga pelikula, no? Lalo pag Metro Manila Film Festival, galing Star Cinema, Bini, no? Which now is taking space, no? Taking up space in the global landscape. Galing ABS-CBN din yan, no? News-wise, although syempre, this is not without critics, but TV Patrol as a tabloid newscast on television, bago nagkaroon ng TV Patrol, mga newscast dati, napaka-formal, di ba? As in, narito po ang mga balita ngayong araw na ito. Tapos politics, national news, yung mga top story. When TV Patrol came, it's tabloid on television, which is krimen, showbiz, di ba? And then after that, dahil nakita nila na nag-rate ang TV Patrol, everybody followed suit. Now, when you tune in at 6:30, mapa TV Patrol, 24 oras o Frontline Pilipinas yan, pareha sila na ang format ay tabloid news on television. Diba? Yung nagpanguna ng TV Patrol. Diba? Although of course, that's not without critics. Maraming mga kritiko dyan, no, sa format na pinauso ng TV Patrol. But nevertheless, TV Patrol na nagpauso nun and everybody followed suit. My point here is, hindi talaga natin maitatanggi yung impluwensya ng ABS-CBN when it comes to how we consume media and what media are we consuming at kung anong uri ng content yung kinokonsumo natin bilang mga media viewers and media consumers. Up until, di ba nga, if you remember, nung nakuha ng mga Villar ang All TV2, no? TV2, when they got the frequency of ABS-CBN, sumunod ba ang taong bayan na manood sa Channel 2? Hindi eh. Di ba? Hindi nagre-rate noon ng All TV2 with their own programming. And with the expiration no of the franchise back in 2020, nakita natin na merong na bumaba din yung TV viewership after the ABS-CBN shutdown. Hindi ang kumbaga hindi naman agad na distribute yung audience share ng ABS-CBN sa ibang networks. Although partly we also have to take into consideration na at that time din pandemic na uso yung streaming services din no. So dahil lahat tayo nakakulong noon sa bahay. Pero kumbaga ano siya naging perfect combination yung pandemya at yung pagsasara ng terrestrial networks ng ABS-CBN sa pag-shift to digital. Na ngayon ang sinusundan really is the content, not necessarily yung platform, no? Kaya nga, yun nga, halimbawa, si All TV2, nung na-launch, hindi naman lahat ng tao sumunod doon. Kasi parang, alam naman namin hindi yan ABS-CBN no? But now that ABS-CBN programs is finally back on Channel 2, although we have to see the figures yet, no? But maybe, just maybe, baka sumunod na din yung tao ngayon na bumalik sa bagong Channel 2. So, and now that may Kapamilya Online Live na din, there are so many ways to follow ABS-CBN's content anywhere and everywhere. So, kumbaga hindi pa rin talaga natin maitatanggi na malaki pa rin yung impluwensya nila when it comes to content, when it comes to media, the media that we as viewers consume. And I don't think na I don't think na mabilis siyang mag-fade away. The fact that ABS-CBN still soldiers on kahit wala silang terrestrial franchise and yung shift nila towards becoming a storytelling company already speaks volumes about how the network is trying to not just survive, no, but to thrive despite the many changes in the media landscape, in the already fragmented media landscape, no, na meron tayo. I don't think hindi basta-basta mawawala yung impluwensyang yan ng ABS-CBN. At kung sakali lang, although I hope it will not happen, kung sakali lang na talagang hypothetically talagang niliquidate ang ABS-CBN as a company, who will fill the void na pinulat ng ABS-CBN sa pagbabalita, sa entertainment, at sa content, no? At sa content na kinokonsumo natin bilang tao at sa kulturang popular na ine-embrace natin bilang mga Pilipino. Mahirap 'yon. It's very hard to fill that void.
And that was some amazing insights coming from Sir Gian Garma of the UP Los Baños College of Development Communication. Thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Ayan, maraming salamat Nido at maraming salamat din sa lahat ng ating mga taga-subaybay.
Ramil Madriaga has taken the stand for the first time in the impeachment trial of Vice President Sara Duterte in the House of Representatives. This past Tuesday, the VP's alleged former bagman came in handcuffed, wearing bulletproof armor, surrounded by members of the Bureau of Jail Management and Penology from Camp Bagong Diwa in Taguig. During his testimony, he spoke about his relationship with the Vice President and their father, former President Rodrigo Duterte, including how he disposed the 125 million peso confidential funds in just 18 hours, contrary to the 11 days reported by media outlets. So, what did he say about the Dutertes? Let's find out.
Her denial of any affiliation with me is absolutely false. She lied under oath in her perjury complaint against me.
These were the words used to refute Vice President Sara Duterte's denial of her relationship with Madriaga in his testimony in the House Committee on Justice. His connection runs far deeper than what was initially thought by the public. Madriaga claims he was directly hired, quote-unquote, by former President Rodrigo Duterte to support his eldest child, but was under the team of a certain Canlas, who served in the police and hailed from Davao. The former president also tasked Madriaga to spy on former Senator Antonio Trillanes, but was hesitant to assassinate him because of his connection with the armed forces of the Philippines. A year later, a year before the younger Duterte ran for re-election in her Davao City stronghold, Madriaga was asked to watch her closely.
I read from several
former
media
president wanted
reports
to
that
see-
125 million OBP confidential funds in 2022 were reportedly utilized in just 11 days. This is wrong because I personally disposed the money in less than 24 hours. I agreed to do this because at the time I had complete trust in PRD and his close associates. In the event that BBM will not voluntarily step down or hand over the presidency to Sara, extraordinary measures of overthrowing BBM will be considered, which include assassination, mass resignation of government officials, civil disobedience, and even an armed assault of Malacanang Palace.
The former president wanted to see his daughter enter politics instead of her younger brothers Paulo and Baste, alleging they are delusional and gay. Madriaga was given 25 million pesos to buy 2 Harley-Davidson units and 2 Ducatis for Sara Duterte's use while in Manila, and ordinary ones for his group. The Ducati and Harley bikes cost around 2 million to 3.5 million pesos, alongside some accessories worth 500,000 registered under Madriaga and his son's names. Madriaga claims he has never opened or personally went to the locations of the banks, which were done instead by close associates of the former president for quote-unquote intelligence operations and money laundering. According to his testimony, he received a mere stipend of 100 to 150,000 pesos in exchange for his signature on blank checkbooks. Madriaga alleges former President Duterte and President Marcos Jr. entered into a secret pact where the latter would vacate his post in 2025 to give way to a Sara Duterte presidency.
Happy birthday, Sir Ram. I wish you good health and happiness.
He founded the group Initiative for Social Justice, Innovation, and Progress Pilipinas, or ISIP, in 2020, meant to support the campaign of the then Davao City Mayor. For her supporters, that actually meant, Inday Sara is my president. The nonprofit was established alongside Ryan Kilala, who served as Assistant Special Prosecutor in the Office of the Ombudsman, and his wife Alvea. In November of 2021, Madriaga says he was notified by then President Duterte that Ferdinand Marcos Jr. is running for president with his daughter Sara as his running mate. Talks between the Dutertes and Marcoses joining forces emerged after the siblings visited, where Marcos Jr. was able to convince the president to have Sara run alongside him. The condition was Bongbong will voluntarily step down to give way to another Duterte in Malacanang. Madriaga identified himself alongside the vice president in multiple photographs during campaign sorties, private Zoom meetings of the ISIP group, and even during her inauguration in Davao. The committee also presented a video where Sara Duterte is seen handing a flag to Madriaga, and another clip where she explicitly greets him, saying, "Happy birthday, Sir Ram." Donors to the campaign included formerly President Lin Wei-shong, who donated 175 million pesos to the ISIP initiative as additional funding. These were delivered via backpacks and bags handed to Madriaga in the Cebu Hotel in Quezon City, then brought to his house for safekeeping. Madriaga says there were also plans to sabotage the current Marcos administration from the inside, using President's men to reveal supposed corruption issues, serving as a precursor for an impeachment complaint. The Dutertes also plan to forcibly overthrow the current administration and possibly assassinate several government officials to cause civil unrest and stage a coup, recruiting military personnel, civil groups, school clubs, fraternities, criminal groups, and syndicates. Madriaga claims the vice president asked him to coordinate with Colonel Dennis Nolasco, who he worked with in the Presidential Security Group, to go to the Department of Education Central Office in Pasig for a quote-unquote transport. This transport also included Colonel Raymond Dante La Chica, head of the Vice Presidential Security and Protection Group, Richard Peralta Mabagay, Arman Villanueva, and a certain chief and Roel/Noel.
I read from several media reports that 125 million OBP confidential funds in 2022 were reportedly utilized in just 11 days. This is wrong because I personally disposed the money in less than 24 hours.
Madriaga also expressed his disappointment over former presidential spokesperson Harry Roque's suit against him in retaliation to his expose of his involvement in land-grabbing activities in Mariveles, Bataan. The land was said to be converted into a Philippine offshore gaming operations hub. These originally belonged to the Mariveles farmers and were supposed to be handed the rights to the land. Roque and his Pogo partners intercepted the transfer of at least 60 of these titles to the First Bataan Mariveles Holdings Corporation, which belonged to Danny Coral, also an incorporator of Pogo operator Lucky South 99 Outsourcing Incorporated and Lucky South 99 Corporation, all based in Pampanga. Before he left the house premises, Madriaga waived his right to the bank secrecy law to prove transactions done by the vice president happened under his name. As for Sara, she was a no-show again. Committee Chair Representative Jervil Luistro called for her presence multiple times throughout the hearing, but as expected, her chair is empty. So much for the woman who said she was ready to face the allegations filed against her. Now that the intricacies of the vice president's connection to Madriaga has finally been addressed, will there be another statement from her legion of lawyers debunking these once more? Sure enough, there was. The vice president issued a statement on Wednesday debunking the allegations that she struggled during her time in law school, stating she completed these, quote-unquote, on her own terms. She states this mini trial, quote, "This mini trial in the Committee on Justice is true to form for some of its members. Abuse and corruption appear to be the only things they are capable of. Let us remember that the first impeachment case itself was marred by allegations of bribery involving members of the House of Representatives, and this second impeachment is no better," end quote. But once again, she has failed to address the most important question of the committee. Why not just show up and give the public an answer regarding these funds that were allegedly swindled by the vice president for her own personal gain? That is the only way the vice president will be able to clear her name. And that was the storyline this week. I'm Midori Tachibana. Join us next Saturday for the latest storylines. Thank you for watching. Have a great day. And once again, that was the storyline this week. I'm Midori Tachibana. Join us next Saturday for the latest storylines. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.